They're still eating, so you guys are not going to fall asleep. So that's good. So, like Sam said, my name is Sam Alva. I do work for CISA, which is a cybersecurity infrastructure security agency. We are a branch of Department of Homeland Security. We do work with other agencies as far as FBI, CIA, NSA. We're the nerd of the group. So if you look at it, we're the nerds, which is not a bad thing these days. But what I want to cover with you today is very, very, very important. For the simple fact is, the last time we did this last year, I can't remember, we talked more about threats and vulnerabilities in your environment. We're going to cover that in a little bit, but for whatever reason, no one's listening to us. So it's not if, it's when you get hit and how well are you going to recover. We're going to talk things like resiliency, and we're going to talk about risk management. We're going to talk about risk factors, threats, vulnerabilities, consequence, likelihood, impact. We're going to talk about residual risk, inherent risk, and how all of those words pertain to you. I just got back from DC. I went to the Google headquarters, and we were at a governor's association meeting. So I was speaking in front of a bunch of chief information officers for different states across the United States. And my subject matter expertise is in water. Those of you realize that there's no contingency plan for water. We got one source, and you see we had a water ban here a couple months ago. I think we might still be in it. Water is a very scarce necessity right now. As you see what happened in the southeast, we don't know when they're going to get water back, and that's when you think about that, how we we what's the word I'm looking for? We take for granted the resources that we have. We wake up in the morning and we turn on a light switch and we know it's going to turn on, right? We turn our water faucet on. We know water's going to come out. We get on our phone. Actually, we don't, because we know that has been an issue over the last few months. I mean, how many times has Verizon or AT&T has gone out in the last 6 months, right? Who would have thought? So the things that we're going to cover today, some of them are a little bit boring. So when you look at this, you're like, it's like me looking at your contracts. It's like, because how many of the people really look at a real estate contract, right? Usually you are there to explain everything in there, because how many of you had, and it's probably maybe 5-10% have actually sat there and read everything? No, it's turn page, sign, turn page, sign, turn page, sign, right? That's how it normally goes, right? So 90% of the time? How many of you had one person that actually read everything? Yeah. It's probably boring stuff, you know what I mean? It's repetitive, it's like, and only you understand it because you guys took a test to understand all this stuff, right? It makes sense to you. Well, how many of you have gone into a contract with a vendor that you're just like, just make it work? Sign, or actually you don't sign anymore, you hit a button and you virtually sign everything. Have you read those things? Have you read those service level agreements with your vendors? That's scary, because I can tell you one very large airline who didn't read, and it cost them $500 million. Can anybody guess who that might be? Delta Airlines. When CrowdStrike hit, anybody know what CrowdStrike is, right? Very large firewall company. They work with Microsoft. Well, when CrowdStrike hit, and it wasn't a ransomware attack, and that's what people have to realize, is that people think it's just the criminals, state-sponsored actors. We have DTD people. We have people human error, that made a mistake, and it cost Delta Airlines $500,000 or $500 million, $500 million, that they weren't prepared to take. So that's money lost. So when you look at this, we're going to cover common cyber threats facing the real estate sector. But when we look at developing a cyber incident response plan, all of these things, I'm not going to make you or try to have you understand these things. I am going to simplify things. So if you have a notepad or paper, please take notes, because I'm telling you this right now. And before I begin, because some of you are probably thinking, why should I listen to you? So the credibility factor. So I've been doing this for a very, very long time. It doesn't look that I look 50, but I am. But I'm building the state of Kansas's incident response plan for utilities. Actually, in a few months, I'll be working on Missouri's, and I'm actually going to be traveling the United States, working on other states' incident response plan. So I sort of know what I'm doing when it comes to building these things, but in every sector, it's different, right? And especially in your sector, it's very. I don't know much about what you guys do. The more I would understand it, the more I'll be able to help you. But what I do know is I understand this process, and what you're gonna have to give me is those variables, right? Just like when I said, when you guys get into a contract, you guys don't read that stuff because you assume that your vendor has your best interest. And 9 out of 10 times, they do. They don't expect to get hacked, right? So the first thing we're gonna cover is develop the contingency planning policy statement. And I know most of you are self-contained. In other words, you guys are 1 or 2 person business, right? And that's good and that's bad, because the good part about it is that the only person you have to worry about is yourself, right? The bad part of it, and we'll discuss it, is the fact is that you don't have the resources like large companies for those cybersecurity tools, tactics, and procedures. But I'm gonna help you with that. Because I can tell you this right now, without purchasing anything out there as far as, you know, some fancy Kaspersky or whatever that's gonna protect you, what I'm gonna teach you today is gonna mitigate your threat or your vulnerabilities by 80%. Now, you have to follow through yourself. I could sit here and tell you everything you need to do, but you can leave here and be like, whatever. Everybody here has realized Wichita got hit, right? Mm-hmm. They got hit, technically they got hit on Friday. I met with them on Wednesday, prior to that Friday. And I said, all right, guys, just like this is what we need to do, right? We need to build a governance plan. We need to start identifying your assets, identifying the controls, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, yes, Sam, we're gonna do this stuff. We're gonna do it. And I think it was the Cinco de Mayo weekend. And they got hit Friday because I was coming back from Dallas. I think on Sunday is when I finally got the call. And they said, Sam, where are you at? And I said, coming back from Dallas. And they're like, you need to get back quickly. I'm like, why? And they go, Wichita just got hit. And I'm like, God dang it. I just literally met them on Wednesday. And there was a running joke that I did it, but I'm like, there's no way. No. But here's the scary part. So when they got hit on CISA, somebody like me, they were talking to him on Saturday. And we told them, the first thing we said was, you need to disconnect yourself from the network. Can you completely disconnect? And we said, can you do that? And they said, no, not at this time. And the reason why they couldn't do that is because they didn't know the impact, right? Remember I said we're gonna talk about words? Impact. Well, what's impact? How is it going to impact your life, your business? They didn't know that. They didn't know if they pulled that switch, right? And you lost every capability to the outside world. They didn't know what the physical impact was. So they basically said, no, we're not gonna do it right now, because they didn't know. We wanted to see how interconnected they were, right? You're gonna hear stuff out of here as things progress. Cyber physical impacts is you have a cyber vulnerability with a physical impact. And what happened was they didn't listen to us. So Sunday morning, they got hit with the ransomware. They took out their Wichita Police Department. I'm sure you're probably familiar with that. It sucked, right? I don't know the specifics, but so anyways, so everybody knows how that impacted them. But my point is that's what we're here for, is as we go through these things, since we kind of all are on the same business, I want you to help me identify what assets you have that you rely on to do your business. Your goal, what's your goals and objectives, right? Is to sell homes, right? Sell homes or put contracts on homes or whatever the case may be. When I go into your environment, and actually this is what I do for big companies. I go in there and I said, okay, we're gonna build a governance plan. What's governance? It's building policies and procedures that align with your goals and objectives, right? But we're gonna simplify that, because right now, and I'm not demeaning because most of my friends that are real estate have a lot of money, so I know the value, what you guys do. So when I say your goals and objectives is to sell homes, okay, what does it take to do that, right? What does it take? What assets? When you think about assets, you're thinking about your phone, what programs, what applications, right? What do you use on a daily basis? Now think about all gone, all of it gone. You have access to any of that. How will it affect you? Gone. You can't get it back. There's nobody you can call. You can't call 911. You can't call the FBI. Nobody. You can't call Elon Musk. You can't call anybody. It's gone. What are you going to do? Right? Then you start thinking to yourself, how long can I last without that? And that's when we start talking about RTOs, and which is recovery time objectives, and RPOs, recovery point objectives. The difference between those, one is involving time, the other one involves data. So if you're really bored and you're stuck somewhere for 6 hours, you could read this stuff. I don't recommend it. It's like you telling me, hey, you want to know about real estate? Read. I don't know what books you guys follow, but it's like, hey, read this stuff. And I'd be like, no, I'm not doing it. No, there's no way. But I'm a glutton for pain. So I've read all this stuff, and it's very boring. But it's not boring to me because I apply it to what I love doing, and so it's not boring to me. So when I read this stuff, I'm like, ooh, I can help somebody this way, or I can help somebody that way. So why real estate professionals are a target for cybercrime? Can anybody tell me why? I'll tell you. Well, the information that you guys get from your customers is perfect information. I mean, think about it. Social security numbers, bank account numbers, firstborn, blood type. I mean, it's all in there. It's all in there, right? It's all the information that allows a threat actor to become somebody else. Easy. That's why the information that you guys have is so valuable, and now it's completely gone paperless. You don't even need a paper anymore. The last time I bought my house, which is 2 years ago, the entire process was digital. None of it. I had to, I think when it says you hit digital signatures and it gives you 6 choices of digital signatures you can pick from. It wasn't, so I picked the one that closest matched mine. So I'm like, yep. You know, and then when you hit for initials, it just took and it's clicking through. And I'm not thinking, honestly, I'm gonna tell you the truth. I know you're filming, I'm going all over the place, I apologize.
You're fine. That's why I'm here. Chase.
But as I'm clicking all this stuff, I'm thinking to myself, from somebody that knows how to take all this stuff, and I'm like, this is horrible. You know what I mean?
Dangerous.
It's easy, but it's horrible. Because I'm thinking, all this information somebody could be me. My sister-in-law, I love her to death. I've known her whole adult life, but she's so afraid of things like Venmo and anything on the internet. And I always have to tell her, you're not that important, sorry. You're not important at all. I mean, literally, you're like right above the homeless people. You know what I mean? When it comes to importance, no one wants to get your stuff. You know what I mean? Like even if someone kidnapped you, they bring it back the next day. But she was so paranoid because she's like, oh, I need to do all this stuff. And I've learned, like now people will text me, and I work with a lot of different agencies, and they're like, hey, we need you to give me your social security number, you know, and I'll just send it to them on the email. And they're like, dude, you didn't encrypt that? And I'm like, why? They already have my stuff. You know what I mean? They already have my stuff. So, but people have to realize is that when you really look at how the threat actor work and how malware works, and I'm not going to get into that boring stuff, but you have to let them in. You know what I mean? They have to trick you. Like, any of you guys know what social engineering is? Please tell me you guys know what social engineering is. So for 12 years, I broke into government facilities when I was in the military. And I had a grand old time doing it. Being deceptive was I did really good at it. And I know my wife used to say, that's pretty scary that you could literally dupe some of the best security in the world. But I did it for the greater good. One of the stories that I had that people always felt it was funny was, this is 15 years. Anybody know what the B-2 aircraft looks like? Looks like the Batman plane. Our job was just to take a selfie with it, right? And it wasn't at an air show. Do you guys go to the McCall Air Show this past year? They had a B-2 there, and I always tell people what type of security is on the B-2. And they have a guard at the nose, the wings, and the back. Guard with the gun. That's how secure that aircraft is. So our objective was just to take a selfie with it. Be close enough to take a selfie with it. So we were in Alaska and in Fairbanks. Everybody been to Fairbanks? No? There's actually the North Pole's there. It's actually pretty cool. If you go to Fairbanks, Alaska, go to the place called the North Pole. There's Santa there. And he will tell you, if you tell him where you're from, like I'm from Kansas, he brought up, what's that breakfast place that's famous? Doodle Diner. He's like, do you like Doodle Diner? And I'm like, you are really Santa. I mean, he knew everything, like the coolest thing ever. It was freaking cool. So anyway, you go to Fairbanks, Alaska, go to North Pole, Santa's there, and yeah, I almost heard the bell, you know. Anyways, so they were having a lot of forest fires there. Yeah. And when we were there, they said, Sam, because I was the lead guy that you know develops all these stories. He's like, what story are you gonna make up to get on the base and get on the flight line? And I said, well, shit, you know, it's these fires, and I'm like, man, it sucks because the breathing and everything. So I said, you know what? Let's pretend we're the EPA. Let's pretend we're the Environmental Protection Agency. And we went to Walmart and we got a bunch of face masks and eye drops and a bunch of other stuff. And I said, we're going to pretend we're the EPA, and we are going to pretend that we're part of a humanitarian, and we're going to help the airmen. We're going to say, hey, how are these fires affecting your day-to-day jobs? And they were like, good idea, you know? And so before we went onto the base, because we created fake cat cards, so we getting on the base was easy. I said, but we need who do we fool first? The cops, right? Let's fool the cops. Well, what's the best way to fool the cop? Bring them donuts. So we went and we bought donuts and coffee and orange juice and pastry, all bunch of stuff. We went straight to the security forces and we said, hey, and we made fake, business cards, and we said, hey, we're from the EPA. We wanted to bring you all this because you're going to get a lot of phone calls from us because we're going to be traveling around the base and we're going to be talking to people and we want to make sure that you know that we're out there. We already notified your public affairs so they know that we're out there. So this is just kind of like, we're sorry, we're going to disrupt your day. And they're like, this is great. This is great. And they're eating their donuts. And I said, hey, can you put like an all call that, hey, we're going to be around? And so they went on the radio and they said, hey, be advised, EPA is going to be around the base, blah, 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 blah. And I said, hey, can you take us out to the flight line? And they're like, yeah, we can. You know, and they're like, all right. So we get into the police car and we go out to the flight line. And as we went out there, I'm like, hey, man, can we get close to that cool plane out there? You know, plain idiot. I'm like, that plane's cool. And he was like, yeah, I'll take you out there. So we got to the plane, and I said to my buddy that went with me, I said, hey, man, as soon as we get out there, our objective is to get the selfie with the plane, and let's get the hell out of here, you know? So he's like, all right. So we get out there, and so I'm talking, and I'm going through my fake, you know, clipboard stuff, and I'm like, so, you know, where are you from? You know, how does the fires affect you? You know, blah, 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 blah. Here's some white drops and some whatever. And so this old crotchety guy comes out and he goes, what are you guys doing here? And I say, we're from the EPA. He was like, I don't care where you're from. You're not supposed to be here. And I'm like, well, call the cops. You know? And so he calls the cops and they're like, yeah, they're there. They're good. And they're like, no, you're not supposed to be out here. So I'm like, shit, this guy's going to escalate it. So, of course, I'm like, hey, keep him busy. I'm going to go. So I walked over to the plane and took a picture because I was fairly close to it. And so I told my buddy, I was like, we need to get the hell out of here. So he's like, you're not supposed to be here. And he's getting crazy with everybody. Even the cops are like, dude, he's good. They're good, you know? And he's like, no, they're not on our EAL, right? And so I was like, dude, we got to get here. So I said, you know what? You're right. We're wrong. We're not on our EAL. Let's get out of here. So he get back in the cop car, takes us off the flight line, get into our car. And as soon as we leave the gate, I get a phone call from my boss. And he's like, dude, where are you? Where are you right now? And I'm like, we just left the gate. He goes, you're done for the rest of the trip. He goes, if they find you, they're going to murder you. He goes, the cops commander, which is their equivalent to their police chief, he goes, he is so pissed off that you bought donuts. And he goes, that you duped them and you went on the flight line and got near their $1 billion aircraft. And they're like, yeah, you're done. And so my point to that is that social engineering is still being done now. MGM Grand, Caesar's Palace, MGM Grand told the threat actors to get pound sand, and it cost them a little over $100 million to get their stuff back. They took out the slot machines. I don't know if you see that picture. Like, they had the slot machines had the blue screen of death. It was horrible. Caesars got hit, I think it was a week or two before. They paid them, I think, $30-40 million. They got their stuff back. It's a business. People don't realize it is a business. It's a $2 trillion business. So they're going to continue to do what they're doing. And your guys' industry is full of money. You know what I mean? Full of money. If they're not hitting you for the ransomware, they're finding people that have the information. You see what I mean? That's why it is so important that the things that we discuss and that we identify, that make sure that you have a plan B. All right. So cybersecurity strategies for real estate, risk assessment. Doing a self-risk assessment on your environment, what you depend on. If it's your phone, do you have a backup phone? You know what I mean? What happens if you lose your phone? You know, can you go to, you know, have you tested? Have you made sure that you go to Verizon or Wires to get another phone? Again, I'm just trying to think of things that a real estate person depends on to do their daily job. Think of that backup plan, your risk assessment. Employee training. Again, a lot of you are single employees, so you have to worry about yourself. There's a lot of free cybersecurity training out there that you could take that's absolutely free, just to educate yourself. Improve access control. For example, again, I know you're the only person that have access to that information, but if you're part of a bigger organization, when you're in your company's network, can anybody go anywhere else within that network? And should they? Are you the only person that can access your files? Or can Cindy, Tom, and Larry access your files as well? You see what I mean? Because that what sucks is that if you're doing your part and doing your part as far as cybersecurity, but God, I hope there's no Becky. Is there a Becky in here? I'm trying to think of names. But Becky is like, woo, you know, I'm just gonna do whatever. And then all of a sudden, Becky's the cause of everybody losing their, you know what I mean? So segmentation is important. So making sure that the files that you have are properly segmented. Proper data storage and disposal. How many of your guys' stuff is in the cloud? Everybody raise their hand. That's what I hear. People are like, oh, I use a cloud. They're like, oh, that means you're just secure now. Cloud, and I always give my boss credit for this, but cloud, you know what cloud means? China loves our uploaded data. Because cloud just means your shit's somewhere else physically. That's all it means. But does a person that sold you that cloud tell you the type of cloud that it is? Do they tell you if it's a hybrid? Is it personal? Or is it private? Because those are the 3 cloud types that you get put into. Now, hybrid is a little bit of personal and private, but then you have public cloud, which means that you could be sharing a server with something not so well, you know what I mean? But do you know that? But it's physically somewhere. We did an assessment at a cloud facility here in the US. They spent $16,000 on a retina scan. You go to like the Mission Impossible, you know what I mean? And they were all impressed. They're like, yeah, we got retina scan. And so I'm like looking. So I took my pocket knife out, stuck it in the plunge, and opened the door. And this guy about lost his shit. He's like, what did you do? And I'm like, you didn't put a latch guard. So basically, they spent 20 grand to put this technology in place, but anybody with a pocket knife could have just opened the door up. Just, you see what I mean? That's your data. That's your cloud. So have a plan B with your data. And that's, we'll talk a little about the recovery point objective, is understanding, do you know how much data you need to do your job for 3 days, 4 days, a week? Do you? I would start looking at it. What data do I need to continue for me to make money? Because that's in the end, right? To make money. What data do you need? But are you dependent on an application, access to your phone, access to your computer? Where is that data stored? I'm still helping a friend of mine, and I'm helping them build this program up. And I said, hey, can I see your service level agreement from your provider, your software provider? And I read it, and it was long, I'm not gonna lie. And unless you understand it, remember I was telling you understanding it? You're truly not going to read it. And I said, hey, did you read this? And he's like, no. Did anybody in your office read it? No. but it provides them with a very good software service, right? It does everything they need to do. And I said, do you realize if they get hacked, in this service level agreement says that you better have a plan? Did you know that? He's like, nope. So how many of you know that if your provider, whoever provides you with your software, whatever that allows you to do your business, if they get hacked, how are they gonna help you? Because I promise you, you're not gonna be number one on their list. You can call them till the cows come home. They're not gonna be like, yeah, sure, Becky, yeah, we'll be right on it. We'll get your stuff back in 2 hours. No, you're probably gonna get the because their phones are VoIP. That means voice over IP. It means connect to the network. You're not gonna be able to call them. And they're not gonna be held liable for your losses. Because in the service level agreement, it says in there, we're not gonna be held for your losses because we're telling you you need to have a backup plan in that service level agreement. I encourage you to read it. And if you don't want to read it, have somebody else read it, but I'm telling you right now, and here's the thing, you don't have to read it, but what I am saying is that start thinking of the assets that you have and what controls are protecting them. What I mean by that is there's 3 controls that you would protect an asset. You have your people or skill set, right? You have process and procedures, and you have technology that will protect it, right? There's three things. And usually within your environment, since it's all automated, is understanding, like I said, the data. Because a lot of times, you guys deal with account numbers, right? A lot of account numbers, a lot of customers, employee information. God, what else? Do you see what I'm saying? If I knew more about your business, I would be able to understand what it takes for you to continue to do your job. All right, phishing and social engineering are a huge threat in the real estate environment because anybody could call up. Like, how do you verify if a particular homeowner is that homeowner? You know what I mean? They could call you up and be like, hey, my account numbers are wrong. Can you verify my account numbers? How many of you will probably give somebody that you don't really know an account number? You know what I mean? And I'm not saying you guys would do that, and I don't know, but if I spent enough time, I could figure out a good social engineering tactic that I could potentially pull that information from somebody. Ransomware, malware attacks, those are another threat that you guys be facing. Data breaches, unauthorized access, and then insider threats and human error. Again, a lot of people don't focus on the human error aspect of it, or even an insider threat. A lot of people are jealous of maybe your success, and somebody wants to hose you. And a lot of times, again, it's human error. We had an incident that happened here recently, and somebody, I responded to a ransomware attack. And first thing when I go in there and I respond, I usually say, listen, I said, this is gonna be a learning event. I said, no one's here to blame. I said, if the information I gather is very important. I said, so I don't want nobody to blame anybody. It's nobody's fault. We're here, it's gonna be learning. And I said, city manager, I need you to go do this. Program director, I need you to go do this. I was telling everybody I need to go do. So the operator was still there, who does the work. He's like, hey, can I tell you something? I'm like, yeah. He goes, so my wife, she bought this $20 bag of stuff at a yard sale or something like that. It was like, like you buy those pallets full of stuff and you don't know what's in it. And he goes, there's a thumb drive in it. And I said, okay. And he goes, well, it looked like a cool thumb drive, so I plugged it into my laptop. And I said, okay. And then he goes, then I remoted into the office. And I said, well, at least he was smart enough to tell me that, because I thought to myself, that's probably how the actor probably got in. Luckily, it wasn't, but it was one of those things to where I'm like, I know most of you are thinking like, hopefully everybody's thinking like, God, what an idiot. But this person operates a very scarce resource. But do you see what I'm saying? It's the education piece behind it. All right, contingency plan. Anybody here can tell me what resiliency is?
How you bounce back.
Yes, how you bounce back. Most people could tell me about resiliency when it comes to their personal health. You know what I mean? That's why I work out every day. That's why I eat healthy, blah, 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 blah. But what I want to cover here with you is what does resiliency look like with your job? You know, like I said, if I knew more about your job, I am, because my workout buddy is in the real estate. So the more and more I learn, the more and more I think, God, your guys' industry is moving so fast, but there's really nothing protecting it, and that's probably why there's so many incidents that are occurring within your environment. So resiliency, he's right. Resiliency is the ability to quickly adapt and recover from any known or unknown changes to your business environment. I always go back to Rocky's saying, remember? He's like, it's not how hard you hit, it's how hard you could take a hit and get back up, right? That's what it is. There's been numerous of hospitals and businesses who shut down after a cyber attack because you can't recover. People don't realize that just because you have cyber insurance doesn't cover your day-to-day operations. If I asked you, what does it cost you each day you can't operate as a real estate person, how many of you could give me that answer? What does it cost you each day? $1,000, $1,500, right? Your insurance is not going to cover that. Your insurance is not going to cover your daily losses. Your insurance is going to cover the data that you need to get back. So on average, the threat actor that hit you with ransomware, they're in Russia, they're in Korea, they're in whatever. That's why they usually tell you contact them at night, because that's the only time they're working. So you're at the mercy of the threat actor when you're trying to navigate that whole ransomware. And it's not funny, haha, but a ransomware cyber attack is just like a normal ransomware when somebody kidnaps your child. You go through all the processes as far as you need proof of life, right? That's the first thing they tell you. Hey, tell me a file that you want, and I'll send it to you unencrypted. So basically it's saying, hey, ask my kid or whoever what's their favorite color or something like that. I mean, it literally goes through the same process that you would in a normal kidnapping. So think about that, because here's the thing. As we learn more and more about the difference between information technology and operational technology, which covers utilities and things like that sometimes the data is not as valuable. But I know in your environment, it is very valuable. So trying to make sure that you guys have copies of that data off-site, or not off-site, sorry, on a hard drive. I mean, even with me, I always tell people, don't confuse being prepared with paranoia. One gives you confidence, the other one takes it away. Every week, I take everything that I've developed, if it's intellectual property or anything that I do, and I throw it on a hard drive. And this hard drive is not connected to the network. I throw everything. It's literally a copy of all the files on my desktop. I throw it on a hard drive, and it's not connected at all. So I know that if I were to experience, or even if the government has experienced a ransomware attack, and they take my stuff, I know that I'm only going to lose a week worth of information. And to me, that's resiliency. And I encourage you that you need to figure that out. What does that look like for you? Because everybody's different. So one of the things that you have to understand why we use CIA. CIA is the foundation of information technology security. So it's confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So confidentiality is important because that confirms the identity of whoever you're working with. The integrity is the information, making sure the information is true. If I send somebody a letter, I need to make sure that letter wasn't altered. And then availability is making sure that the way that I send that information back and forth, that it's available all the time. How many of you hear about AI? Right? How has AI helped the real estate industry? Do you think it's helped it or hindered it?
Okay.
It's helped it? How give me an example how it's helped it? Follow up. Yes, and I'm not gonna lie. I went to the Google headquarters and I met with the people actually who developed Gemini. You guys know what Gemini is for your Android users? It's really cool. And they talk about generative AI and predictive AI. Anybody know the difference between those two? It's cool to understand. So generative AI is basically any data you feed into it, right? Any data you feed into it is what you get out of it, right? Which most of what AI is now, that's what you get back. Like ChatGPT, it's create information. But what happens if, and how many of you depend on that data, right? A lot of us do. We use it all the time. But like I said, it depends on good data coming in, and then it gives you good data out. Well, what happens if somebody were to hack that and they put bad data in there, right? You're gonna get bad data out. And so to me, because here's the problem with AI. Morality in AI doesn't exist. In other words, it doesn't know the right between right and wrong. That's why AI, it scares me. I don't like it. I was there at the Google headquarters and I said, no offense, but I don't like using it. Because they're trying to force AI on everything we do. And AI does make things easier. You know, you could type in ChatGPT or whatever and it tells you, you don't even have to do anything. And it spits it out, you know, and it works great. However, we have to understand that at any point in time, if you're dependent on it, you need not to. Because what happens when AI becomes disrupted or we lose connectivity to it? All right, how many of you have a business impact analysis? Oh, come on, this is hurting. This hurts. So a business impact analysis is what we've been discussing. It's identifying the resources that you use to make sure your business is successful. So what process do you depend on and what systems support it, right? Because you may have, for example, how many of you have home offices? Majority of you. How many of you, this is good. How many of you have an UPS connected to your home office? UPS is an uninterrupted power supply. So if you lose power, right? If you lose power, that means your system's still gonna remain on. So how many of you, when you're not in your office, connect to something at your home? Yeah. So that means if you're gone and you lose power, that means you're not gonna be able to have access to it. You see what I mean? So that's just a small, what I'm saying about is that you have systems that you depend on and what supports those systems. And it could be as simple as adding a UPS, uninterrupted power supply, and you can buy them on Amazon for $100 or whatever. You know what I mean? But what that does is that it keeps your system up. Because here's the thing: what computers don't like. Computers don't like being shut off unexpectedly, right? And what does an UPS also do though is that if you have a lightning strike, right? If a lightning strike strikes your house or anywhere, it could basically fry your computer. How many of you depend on your computer? Right? What happens if you lose your computer? Yeah, right? And how many of you, in most new computers now, how many of you are using OneDrive within your computer? Or some type of cloud within your computer? See, there should be a lot more hands. Because that means that if you lost your computer, there goes all of your information. $500, you could probably have a good start to this. $500 or less. I mean, Amazon is great as far as buying stuff. And again, and probably over the next 2 weeks, I'll work with Sam and I'll work with my buddy, and maybe I'll get a list out. Because again, the more I understand about what you guys do, the more that I could help you build your plan. And it's not, for me, it's not hard. The hardest part is for you as the owners, operators, is to take this information and actually put it into use. Because I can tell you this right now, most of my customers, they always say this. They're like, Sam, I know you want to say I told you so. I'm like, no, I'm not. That's unprofessional. You know what I mean? I would never tell you that. Now when I close the door and I'm like, God dang, I told that. What did they do? And it happened. You know what I mean? Because I get frustrated because every time the bad guy gets a success, I take it personal. So again, we discussed this on-prem or cloud. On-prem, when you hear these nerds talk about on-prem, that means what you have in your home or in your office. Cloud, just as we progress, cloud's getting cheaper. When you do go to cloud, ask those questions to the engineering guy. Is it private, is it hybrid, or is it personal? You're gonna pay more for private. Private means that it's only your information in that server somewhere else. Nobody else is accessing that server, so you're not sharing it. And so you're gonna pay more information to that. Now, is it worth it? Yeah, sometimes if you're dealing with data that is very important to you, like account numbers, things like that. So yeah, so ask them. a lot of times when I deal with these internet providers or MSPs or all these, I always like it because they always send me their salesmen, and I'll freaking eat them up and spit them out. And they're like, oh, I'm sorry, I should have sent our engineer. You know what I mean? And I'm like, cool, wasting my time, you know? But that's what I provide for you guys. You know, if you guys ever need a question, Sam has my contact information. Go ahead and send me an email. You know what I mean? I work from home. They took my car away from me, so I'm legless now. So that's all I do. You know what I mean? Well, I do travel and do this, but everything I do now is virtual. Identify critical processes for recovery, meaning in your head, like some of you says, my computer. Is your computer truly your single point of failure? If it is, after we leave here, you need to go on Amazon and buy a backup hard drive. You know what I mean? Is it connection, right? How many of you depend on either AT&T or Verizon or Cox, right? How many of you have a puck?
What's a puck?
A puck is these, a puck is this. How many of these? So if you lose Cox or if you lose your primary internet service, you turn this on and then now you have an alternate means of communication. Because that could be huge, especially if you depend on the network. And that's what that internet dependent, understanding how things connect and communicate. Now, those of you who say you work at home, how many of you have kids that use the internet? Right? That's dangerous. God knows where they're going. You know what I mean? If I had internet at whatever that age is, I wouldn't have gotten a clearance. But think about that though. They're connected to what you use for business. You know, so considering that. You know, maybe you separate your networks. Maybe you put your kids on a guest network that doesn't touch your business network. You see what I mean? Doing small things like that is very easy. And just Google it. You know what I mean? It's very simple. You go into your settings, and a lot of times they already have it set up that way, because how many of us have home offices now? So these new routers are set up that way. So then when your kids are using the internet, it's completely separated from your business side of your home use. We talked about this when you conduct your business impact analysis. What resources does your system require? You know, how many of you have that person where they're like, man, if we lost Susie, I don't know where we'd be, right? Everybody has that, right? If you could say that in your head, that means you don't have an incident response plan. I use Carl a lot when I do water, because everybody has a Carl. Because I usually tell Carl, I'm like, and I know Carl, but I usually, when I do these big mass gathering trainings for utilities, I'm like, how many of you have a Carl? And I explain, Carl is that person that has been there for 50 years. He knows everything about your entire operation, right? And I was like, all right, Carl, this is great. You are a asset to this company. Have you written everything down? He's like, nope. So, and Carl's very seasoned, right? That's a nice way of saying, Carl could slip, you know what I mean? Carl could forget how to get to work, you know what I mean? How do you replicate Carl? You know, so I said, if you have a Carl within your organization, make sure you have a plan B. What are your system interdependencies? Like I mentioned earlier, is that if you utilize a application or a software, a friend of mine gave me this idea the other day, and I've seen it, is how many of you guys use your phone to open up a house now? That application. What happens if you lose that? Or what happens if, I'll tell you this is a scary story, is I went last year, early this year, I did a road show for water, for training on, not this, but some other things. And I had a couple of young gentlemen here, and they were not young, they're in their early 20s. And I'm talking about the ability to control water operations from your phone. And he was so excited, he was like itching to tell me. He kept on showing me his phone, I was talking, and he's like, I got this, you know? And I'm like, okay, so what do you want to tell me? He's like, I could control the pumps and valves of our water facility on my phone. And I'm like, that sucks. That sucks. Because I'm looking at his phone, I say, can you show me? And you have Instagram and TikTok and every other not good things that you're supposed to have on your phone right next to so-and-so water treatment facility. And here shortly, not same scenario, But here's the thing, he just picked it up and just went right into it. There was no multi-factor authentication. There was no two sign-on verification on it or nothing. He just double-clicked and he's in it, and he could raise, lower, whatever. Bad scenario here recently, I get a phone call, actually I did a phone call. We had this nerd group, and he sends me an email and he's like, hey, check out this little, he took a picture of it, and it said, so-and-so, I think I hit with a water attack. And I'm like, crap. So I'm like, I don't know anybody there, so immediately I contact the state. The state contacts them, and they said, no, it wasn't an attack. And then about an hour later, they're like, wait a minute, we don't know if it was an attack. So what happened was, an operator went on his phone and fat fingered and set 100 PSI through about 7 pipes. And it was 7 pipes were busted. 6 of them were 8-inch pipe and 1 12-inch pipe. And he did it on his phone. And I'm like, there was no even on Amazon, when I order stuff, it says, are you sure you want to do this? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? I'm like, yes, I am sure. No, not with this app. It's like, yep, you want to blow up this thing up? Yep, go ahead. And so do you see how scary that is? With technology, it does provide efficiencies, but it provides deficiencies, and we need to understand this, because earlier today, last week, I was talking to somebody like, oh man, we're getting on this new system, and I'm like, did they talk about the bad part of it? And they're like, no, and I'm like, that's not good. They should tell you the bad parts, not the bad parts, but hey, there are the possibilities of this, and this, you know what I mean? But no one ever asked that. Every time I ask that question, and they're like, huh, no one's really asked. So really, no one's ever asked if you get hacked, what's gonna happen? Like, yeah, no one's really talked to us about that. And I'm like, not good. So, I think I kind of covered this already. Service level agreements, when you guys get into, or even currently, I know what you guys have now, ask your vendor. I know you have contact to your vendors, you know what I mean? Ask to look at it. And if you don't have a plan, then if you need assistance, I'll help you get where you need to go, because it shouldn't be very difficult to get the data that you need, and hopefully you never have to use it. I'm praying you never have to use it, but just in case you do, at least you have the ability to go to manual operation, not depend on that. So those service level agreements are something you don't understand, I can help you with. RTO versus RPO, recovery time objective, is truly understand within yourself, how long can you go without that before your business goes, turns upside down, both from a time perspective and also from a data perspective. How much data do you need to continue operation? What's important data that you have? Because I'm pretty sure in your app, you could send that data to yourself and print it out. You know what I mean? If it's customer information, if it's account information, if it's, how about files that you need to sell a house? Are they only digital, or can you print them out? And if you can print them out, are they on your, what happens if you lose your computer? Do you have a copy of that somewhere else? All these things, and again, I don't know your, but I'm trying to get you guys into that mind frame of like, God, what do I need if I lost everything? What's gonna make me continue to be able to work? Identify key or preventative measures, routine backup, and then check those backups. You know what I mean? A lot of times, even if you have to have a reminder on your phone that says, hey, make sure I back up my data every week. I said, I back up my data every week. So if I lose, I'm only gonna lose 6 days. We talked about uninterruptible power supplies, hotspots, and then again, make it a routine. Make this thing's routine. Remember I was talking about resiliency? We're resilient in life, and what things that we do in life, we have, porch lights, we go to the gym every day. There's things that we do to remain resilient. We need to apply that to your job. What's my backup plan? What am I gonna do, right? Write that down. A lot of times, it happened to somebody, we built it together. We built a backup plan. They got hit with a ransomware attack. Where was their backup plan? On their computer. I was like, are you kidding me, dude? It's seriously on your computer? He's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, yeah. So if you create a backup plan, print it out somewhere. You know what I mean? Because what happens, have you ever had I know I've done this plenty of times, and I felt bad because I yelled at my wife. But have you ever done something that's pretty intricate, but you've done it 1,000 times that you could do it in your sleep, but you want somebody else to do it? And they're like, man, I don't know what you're talking about. How many times do you, yeah. Have a plan. So then I yelled at my wife. I'm like, oh, you need to, it was something, reset the garage door for her or whatever. And it was something was wrong with it. And I was like, oh, it's so easy. If I was there, I would have been able to do it. And she yelled at me, hung up. And I forgot that I've done this 1,000 times. She hasn't. You know what I mean? Not her fault. But if there's something like that you've done 1,000 times and you need to depend on somebody else, have it written down somewhere in a folder so then when that person, what's that?
YouTube it.
Or YouTube it, yeah, but then you don't have internet though.
Oh.
Do you see what I mean?
That's true.
Yes. See,
Now you just.
we immediately, I'll Google it. You know what I mean? What happened? Google's not there. What happened? YouTube's not there. Do you see what I mean?
Gotcha.
That's what I'm talking about. I'm telling you this right now. Unfortunately, if you look at what's going on outside our world, it doesn't look good. And I'm not here to tell you whatever, but my son is a fusion analyst, and when I don't hear from him for a long period of time, he's having fun. And when he's having fun, it's not good. Because he always tells me, Dad, when we're in peace, it sucks. You know what I mean? But when there's stuff going on, it's fun because he's doing cool shit. But it doesn't look good either on our side. But my point to that, though, is that, we know that if we were to go that route, China will come after our communications. They're going to come after our utilities. They're going to come after and I'm not telling you right now to go storm Costco, Arizona. You know what I mean? I'm not telling you to do that at all. But I'm just telling you is have a plan. We're a resilient country. Just have a plan. That's all I'm saying. All right, test, train, and exercise. We talked about that. Is that I can tell you all these things to do, but unless you've somewhat gone through them and have a pamphlet, you know what I mean? But like, open a book. It says, how do I get back to normal operations, or whatever the case may be, whatever you want to call it, and go through that. Make sure you have everything in place. Okay, I have an uninterrupted power supply. I have a puck that I spend X amount of dollars, because all that stuff's tax write-off. You know what I mean? I have a hard drive that I update every week. There's certain things that if I'm incapable of doing them, maybe I have it written out for somebody else to do them. Do you see what I mean? Because what happens if you get injured, right? What happens if you get injured and maybe you have an associate, or you have a relative, or your significant other? Maybe they need to do what you need to do, and you can't do it. Wouldn't it be nice for them to have, this is what so-and-so does? You see what I mean? Have that plan set up. Plan maintenance. Making sure again, these are very, very fed, whatever. But we talked about your job. These are the operational requirements is what you do day to day. Security requirements, like I was telling you today, or not earlier today, is when the last time I bought a house, it's a little scary that everything is all virtual by an email. Even when I do my taxes, it's crazy. And I see that there is a lot of multi-factor authentications, but if you see something that you're being told to do without multi-factor authentication, then say something. You know what I mean? Talk to the vendor. Talk to like, hey, I don't feel comfortable in this, because what's going to happen is that you're going to pass it on to your customer. And what happens if they get their information hacked? They're going to blame you. They're not going to go to the vendor. They're not going to go to an XY vendor and be like, you sold my real estate person crappy stuff. No, they're going to go to you and be like, you didn't do your due diligence. You just did this because it makes your job easier. You see what I mean? Again, names and contact information of your vendors. Do you have a 24-hour number that you could call your vendor if you lost access to whatever it is that you're using that's very critical to you? You know what I'm saying? Like, if you use an application and it just doesn't work, do you have an after-hours person that you could call, like during the holidays or anything like that? And the reason why I say that is because on the utility side, when hackers hack stuff, they don't hack you at Tuesday at 11:30. Mm-hmm. They hack you on a Sunday, exactly, or Monday morning on a 4-day weekend, yep. And you can't get a hold of anybody. Remember, that's when that RTO and RPO comes into play. You know what I mean? How many days can you go without working before it starts affecting your finances? Vital data, again, it's very repetitive. Understanding what data is important to you. All right, that's it. So I know I covered a lot of information with you today. Questions? I hope I didn't do this to scare you at all. It was more of awareness, to saying, hey, I'm telling you right now, your data, the real estate professionals is an active target for criminals. Not state-sponsored criminals, just regular criminals. And making sure that you have, I was very lucky to be part of a recent incident that basically the city told the threat actors to go pound sand. They're like, I don't care if you have our data. We don't need it. We have enough data that we can survive. That's great, because then they're like, crap, it can't do anything. You know what I mean? So we take the power away from them. If you guys can do the same thing, we're taking the power away from those individuals. And hopefully we continue that trend. Hopefully it gets less ransomware, because it's right, $2 trillion right now is that business, is ransomware. So, yes, ma'am.
What's a puck?
A puck? No, I call it a puck because
Hotspot.
it looks like a
Hotspot?
hotspot.
I
Yeah.
don't know what that is. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
okay, hotspot, okay.
Yeah, but now they're 5G now, so
Yeah. Okay.
and they work really, really well, because a lot of times, depending on where you're at,
Yeah.
if you're in a building or something like that, and yeah, or if you can't use your phone as a hotspot.
Yeah.
But yeah, these things work. But like I said, I will give Sam my information, and if you want to reach out to me, I could I'll create like a top 5 things on what you need to do, and how you need to do it. If you have questions like, how big of hard drive do I need? You know what I mean? Do I need a gig? Do I need a terabyte? Because a terabyte is pretty large. So whatever. There's a lot of things that you could ask for or whatever. Because there's also, you could do thumb drives. Thumb drives now, again, data is getting very usable. So where you can get a 500 gig thumb drive, that's password protected, meaning that, and it's good and bad, because there's people that will forget the password. And if you enter it too many times, it literally does the mission impossible and erases all your data. So you want to make sure that, depending on if you get one of those, you don't want to, because I had people get mad at me and they're like, I got that stupid thing and I lost all my data because I forgot the password. And I'm like, and then another thing too, I know most of you are probably getting frustrated with password changes. Like now, I think, you know what the government minimum password length is? 15 characters. 15 characters. Most people are only using 8. For 8 characters, it takes brute force about 30 seconds to crack. So if your passwords are only 8 characters long, 30 seconds is what it takes to crack. I think up to 12, I think it's a minute. That right now the technology, AI, will hack and brute force means that they just throw everything at it, and about a minute and a half is right now, but for about 12. So that's why the government recommends 15. And then when you do a 15 character password, how many of you still use Fluffy Pants 2010? You know what I mean?
Pets and dates.
Yeah, or what? Yeah. How many use that? Don't use that. I use passphrase. So I usually create a sentence. Like, I love watching the Chiefs lose on Sundays. You know what I mean? I'm sorry, I had to throw that in there. Gets your attention. But anyways, you take the first letter of that sentence, and then you create the password that way. Because if you had as many passwords as I have, it makes it easier. Then I just go to the second word. You know what I'm saying? So it prevents you from having to write it down, because it's something easy you can remember, and it allows you to get those 15 character passwords. How many of you understand what multi-factor authentication is? If you don't know what multi-factor authentication is, it is very important, because 99% of the hacks are occurring because there's no multi-factor authentication. Meaning is, and you guys use it. So multi-factor authentication is, how many have mobile banking? Everybody raise your hand. That's when you log into that, and it says, can you confirm either I'm gonna send you through your phone number or an email, a password after you've already logged in. That's multi-factor authentication. So you've been using it. I'm trying to encourage that we use multi-factor authentication in everything, because multi-factor authentication will literally eliminate 99% of your threats out there right now because no one's using it at all. You know what I mean? Especially in the software, because it's hard to implement those types of security protocols in a lot of the software. It's too expensive. Yes, sir.
I'm familiar with what I call battery backup. It's
Uh-huh.
the same thing as uninterruptible power supply. We're talking about the same use.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So what he said is that the uninterrupted power supply, what it is that if you lose power, depending on how much load you have on that battery, it'll stay on for an hour or 20 minutes. Usually your power will come back on, but that's what he was mentioning about that piece. Yes, sir.
As far as a cell phone, I was one of those that was down by Verizon a day last
Yep.
week. Or maybe last week. Is a satellite phone a
Yeah.
better option to have?
It's expensive. Very.
As a backup?
As a backup, yes, but it's very, very, it's expensive to have it that way. A lot of times what people are doing is they're getting a basic phone from a different carrier. Sometimes that works. Or a lot of people, if they're very nerdy, they use Starlink because you could go cell service communication as well. So there is some, there are some, like some of my nerdy friends, they're still using CB radios. They still have it, just in case. And I don't disagree with them because that I'm telling you right now, yeah, that will definitely save your end. Yes, sir.
On the I'm a banker, by the way, not real estate, but on the cybersecurity insurance aspect, what we're seeing is that most companies don't know what they're buying when it comes to cyber insurance,
Mm-hmm.
and that they think it covers things that it doesn't.
Yep.
But then we're also telling them that if they can attest to doing these things, having good hygiene and good
Yes.
policy, that they will qualify for lower cybersecurity rates. Have you seen that, or can you speak to that?
So yes, those of you that are in the market for purchasing cybersecurity insurance, we have what we call our CPGs, cybersecurity performance goals. That's what I do now, is I develop those. There are certain requirements for having cybersecurity insurance, and one of them is multi-factor authentication, unique credentials, blah blah blah. So yes, you have to have those in place to actually currently receive cybersecurity insurance. If not, and there are some stipulations a lot of times too. Is like if you get hit by Russia or a country that we may be in conflict with, it voids it out, which is horrible. So that means if you get hit by a country that we're not in good standing with, that it could potentially void it out, your cyber insurance. But I'm telling you right now, and I didn't cover that in this, but CISA, we have kind of our five core things is segmentation, making sure that your critical data is separated from non-critical data is one. Unique passwords, making sure that you're utilizing those 15-character passwords. I know it's a pain in the butt. And then multi-factor authentication is another big one. And then not sharing passwords. A lot of times unique credentials, which means we were talking about access control, making sure that not everybody has access to your information. Only those people that are need to use type environment. And those things right there will negate yourself from 98% of those people that are constantly just getting hit. And then a lot of other things too, and I didn't mention this too, but social media. I know you guys live and breathe on social media, but I always tell people, quit posting that you're going on vacation before you go on vacation. Post afterwards. You know what I mean? Quit posting. I know you have to do it because you guys show homes. I'd even take it to a part to where having two different social media accounts, one for business and one for personal. To me, it allows people to have access to too much of your personal information. It's horrible. Your kids are your weakest link, because your kids post everything about what you're doing, and then you get caught in the crossfire. A lot of times when we used to do OSINT, open source information, we would look at the kids and see what they're posting to get information on the parents. That's another aspect of that. Having those plans in place, telling your kids, hey, if somebody ever asks about you or me, or don't put me anything involved in what you're doing. You know what I mean? So, but yeah.
So what I'd like to do is, there's two things I want that I forgot to mention, but what I plan on doing with Sam and then with the help of Tyson back here is putting together something for the entire industry of the top 5 or 10 things that you ought to purchase and the top 5 or 10 things you need to do or need to stop doing. And I'll make that readily available to the entire real estate industry. But some of the things that I've learned from Sam over our friendship and all this cybersecurity is to have a different password for every single login. I preach it to my family all the time, and I know it's a pain in the butt, but password apps are $10 a year, and every single password you have, none of them should be repetitive, not a single one. I think another thing is buy malware. I think another thing is pay $100 for LifeLock to protect your identity. Have a VPN. We are all at coffee shops getting on Wi-Fi all the time. Get a VPN to protect your computer. When my computer crashed less than a year ago, I had the blue screen of death on my MacBook. I went to drop it off at Geek Squad at the Best Buy out west, and they said it'll take 4 to 6 weeks. I was like, my life is dependent upon this laptop and this telephone. So I had to buy another laptop right then and there, and I bought a 2 terabyte hard drive, which is still in its package, and I will start backing up my computer. And so we'll make a list of best practices, all of that. But so thank you for being here, and we can continue doing questions and answers. WABA has allowed us their space till 1:30, so we're welcome to stay here, and I think Sam has that time blocked off for you as well. But 2 things. Lunch was made possible by Art Larangel, one of our advertising partners. He does all can metal buildings, he does roofing, he's a GC. I know and adore Art personally. He's working on a house of mine right now, and you can trust him for all of your GC needs or roofing, just another person to add to your vendor list. And then today is Tyson Bean's birthday, and we all love Tyson, so I think we need to sing Tyson happy birthday. So here we go. You know I love you, buddy. Here we go. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Tyson. Happy birthday to you. And many more. Thank you. And so anyway, if there's any questions, please stick around, please ask, please network. Thank you, Sam, for just your grace and your time and infusing us with this knowledge. It's not meant to scare you. It is meant to get you to take action and protect yourselves, because you don't want to be like the city of Wichita or anybody else in town that's been attacked by cyber criminals. It's really not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So don't be that victim.
Thank you.
Questions?
Yeah, questions.